Welcome to the Bookies Plus weekly betting show where you'll get free NFL picks for week 9 from 4 of our gambling experts. Now, you can also find our free picks at bookies.com/picks. Not only do we have free NFL picks, but we got you covered for just about any sport that you like to wager on. Don't forget, there's a new episode of this show every Wednesday for the remainder of the NFL season. This week, we'll have picks from Bill Speros, the senior betting analyst at bookies.com, Adam, the ATM Thompson. And by the way, wonderful hat there, Bill. Happy Halloween to all. And Adam, one of the nation's premier handicappers, over 60% on the NFL in the last 3 years. Got Nick the Whale Whalen, been in the industry for over a decade, covers NFL, NBA. You'll find him on RotoWire. You'll see guest analyst spots on VSiN and DraftKings. And I'm Jim Coventry. All right, we are going to get to the picks. Bill Speros, start us out with that Thursday night extravaganza.
The Jets are playing on Halloween. The House of Horrors, that is MetLife Stadium. The Jets have been waiting for the Great Pumpkin since 1969. And guess what? It ain't coming this year. Look, the Jets have lost 5 straight. They failed to cover in 15 and 19. Odds makers see this game as a pick 'em on a neutral field. I get that Steph Diggs is out. I get that Nico Collins is OIR. I get all that. And this is kind of the game where the odds makers and the gambling diehards would say, you might want to look at the Jets, but this is the Jets on Halloween. The horror show. You want to talk about seeing ghosts. I think Aaron Rodgers is seeing ghosts of the career that's dead because he went to the Jets. I think the Jets could shock everybody and dress up as a fully functioning franchise this year, but I don't see it. I like the Texans, and I'd also consider the under.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that, man. What a sad string of events in New York because it potentially was so promising coming into the season. Adam Thompson, why don't you get us started? Last week, the Bears really disappointed us. Wonderful, wonderful coaching in Chicago, as has always been the case. Thoughts on this week's game?
Yeah, well, first off, the Jets were my Super Bowl pick to go to the Super Bowl this year, so I'm horrified by what is expected on Thursday as well. Yeah, Chicago, they couldn't have given away a game any more than they gave one to Washington. Defensively, they actually played pretty well. Offensively, it was a disaster, and then the final play, of course, was talk shows everywhere across the nation spent a long time on all the things that went wrong there, but I think they can bounce back this week. I think that was a bottoming out. They kept their coaching staff, which I'm a little bit surprised about. Nobody lost their job for what happened there. But, Arizona's defense, 26 versus the run, 26 versus the pass. The Bears are 3-0-1 against the spread, against teams that are allowing at least 25 points a game. Arizona fits that category. And, they scored 35 against the Jaguars. They scored 36 against the Panthers the previous 2 weeks before taking on Washington. I think Arizona's defense is more like those two than it is against that Washington defense. So, I think they're in good shape. The spread is basically pick 'em almost at this point. Arizona's, won 3 of 4, so they're not playing poorly. In fact, they beat a Miami team last week that Jim and I both thought was going to win by 30.
Yes.
So I'll give Arizona some props there, but all those wins they've had have been by 2 points or less. So they're playing close games. They're overachieving at times. They're underachieving at times. But I think this is just a good bounce back spot for the Bears.
Yeah, Caleb Williams should be a get-right spot here. Not a lot of confusion from that defense. Nick, you're going to give us our one over and under on this show. Why don't you go ahead and rip that one away?
Yeah, well, first of all, I agree with Bill on the under in that Texans-Jets game. I don't think either team is going to be scoring many points. Obviously, Stephon Diggs out for the Houston Texans for the remainder of the year, so they're just down to basically one receiver in Tank Dell. So I think that's the move on that game. I'm looking at the over 46 in this Colts-Vikings matchup, and, I would not have taken the over in this game if Anthony Richardson was starting, but that is not the case. It will be Joe Flacco. Shane Steichen confirmed this morning that it's not just a one-game thing. Flacco will be the guy the rest of the season for the Colts. Now you look at the over-under record so far this season. Both teams have been under teams. Well, a big part of the reason for that on the Indy side is they're going under basically every time Anthony Richardson is in the lineup. We see a completely different team whenever Flacco is out there. They put up 27 against Pittsburgh. They put up 34 against Jacksonville. The one blemish is that Tennessee game, which was a 20-17 score. But I think this is a back and forth game. I think Flacco obviously opens things up for that Colts passing game. It completely changes guys like Josh Downs and Michael Pittman as far as their fantasy upside goes. And for as good of a defense as Minnesota is, this is a team that's given up the third most passing yards per game. I think it's actually a decent matchup for Joe Flacco to air it out. And the Colts, obviously not a great defense themselves. They're in the bottom 10 in terms of yardage allowed. They're in the bottom 10 in terms of pass defense EPA. So if the Colts are going to hang around, it's going to have to be a shootout. I think this could be a game that's played in the high 20s. We could have at least one team moving into the 30s. I think that would be Minnesota. But even if the Colts are playing from behind, I feel a lot better about Flacco putting up some garbage time points than I do Anthony Richardson. So we're going over 46.
2 straight years, we've been very happy to see Joe Flacco take over an NFL offense. I don't know what alternate reality we're in, but man, it's been fun to watch it. It should be again this week. Good call on that one, Nick. And back with both you and Bill on the under on the Monday or the Thursday night game. Yeah, I had that game 17-16, 33 points. Like you guys said, not much scoring here. The under is a beautiful play. All right, I have my first pick. I like the Browns +2 against the Chargers. I get it that the Browns season's been a disaster. I also get it that they upset the Ravens last week and nobody saw that coming. But the reality is that defense has hope now. It's an outstanding defense. Still is from last year. They were playing knowing that they had to play a perfect game with Deshaun Watson. They don't have to do that with Jameis Winston. They can play their style of play, and he can keep them in a game one way or the other. The books, in my opinion, have been overrating Jim Harbaugh since the beginning of the season. They just think this is this juggernaut Chargers team. The rushing attack has become less efficient by the week, and the Browns are an excellent run defense. I get it, Ladd McConkey's good, but these are 3 legit corners that the Browns have, and I don't see where the receivers have a place to win here. The other thing is, and what we're not thinking about, is the Chargers defense has played some easier opponents, and they've looked good with that. Nick Chubb is back. He played 62% of the snaps last week. He had a rugged matchup. This is a game where they have 4/5 of their line healthy. Nick Chubb is going to run it down the Chargers' throats and then the play action shots because those corners, Asante Samuel's on injured reserve. You're going to see those receivers making big plays against a bad secondary. The pass rush won't be an issue for the Chargers because of that rushing attack. I think this is an easy win for the Browns, and they're getting 2 points, so maybe just take the money line. All right, let's get back around the horn here. We're going to go with Bill over to that Detroit Green Bay game.
Yeah, I've been on the Lions Express train for about 2 years. They're 43-18 against the spread in their last 61 games. They're just a juggernaut. They've covered an 8 of 9. They eviscerated the Titans last week, and that was a double-digit spread. That cover was over in the first quarter. I get it. It's NFC South, old black and blue matchup. Vince Lombardi, Greg Landry type stuff, old school, Lambeau Field. Jordan Love's MRI looks good, so the Packers should be healthy, but they barely beat Jacksonville. And the Lions score even when they don't move the ball. They like to put up points. They put up 40 points in 3 or 4 weeks. Their win average here is 22.75 points in the last 4 wins. We're just asking for 3.5. Green Bay keeps it close, but not that close.
Nick, you agree with Bill on this game. Why don't you pile on?
Yeah, of course, there are a lot of unknowns here on the Green Bay side. I don't think it's a given that Jordan Love is out there. And if he is he 100%? Is there risk of re-injury to that groin? I think there's a decent chance that could happen. And then obviously there's the other scenario where we see Malik Willis, who is 2-0 as the Packers starter on the year. He also came in for the save last week against the Jags. But something Bill mentioned, which is that the Green Bay Packers were trailing the Jaguars for much of the second half. They only win that game by 3. This is not a good Jacksonville team by any means. And, Detroit might be the best and most well-rounded team in the NFL. So I don't think Detroit even has to play, they don't have to come in and play an A-plus game by any means. They can beat you in so many ways. We saw it last week. They put up 52 and Jared Goff throws for 85 yards. They were outgained by 150 plus and still win that game by 5 scores. They're the most impressive team to me week to week right now in the NFL. And it feels like the Packers have kind of escaped by the skin of their teeth these last 2 weeks against Houston and Jacksonville. And, you're going up a big step in terms of competition. I will say, I think we get a weird game, whether it's Love or whether it's Willis. Like Green Bay is so well coached that they'll find a way to hang around. I'd be very surprised if Bill and I are counting our money at halftime in this one. And I would lean under on 48.5. I'm here in the state of Wisconsin. So is Adam Thompson. Getting unpredictable weather this time of year. And I'm looking at the forecast for Green Bay, 81% chance of rain in the afternoon at Lambeau Field. So I think we could get a sloppy game. I'm not sure who that really helps. If it's Malik Willis at quarterback, maybe that's a slight advantage for Green Bay. But this Detroit running game is so rock solid as well that it's not pushing me away from the Lions.
Nick, I love how you used the baseball save reference. We're a few days left in the baseball season. Got that working. Little 3-1 right now is the Dodgers getting ready to hopefully close things out, unless you like the Yankees. Sorry if you do. Adam, next pick for you. Washington Commanders. They pulled off the Hail Mary. You talked about that earlier with the Bears. You like the Commanders this week against the Giants. Thoughts?
Yeah, they shouldn't have won, obviously, against Chicago, but they did win. Now they're 6-1-1 against the spread. This is a rematch of a Week 2 game. Washington won that 21-18, but statistically, it wasn't even remotely close. They almost outgained them 2-1 in yards. It was almost a 2-1 time of possession. They just kind of couldn't get in the end zone. This kid kicking field goals. But now, this team has grown by leaps and bounds over the last month plus with Jaden Daniels. And, they just continue to prove. The Giants continue to not improve. They've lost 3 in a row. They've averaged about 9 points a game in those games. The Giants are 4-0 against the spread when favored. The Washington is rather. They're 4-0 when favored against the spread. The Giants are 0-4 at home. They've lost by an average of 15.5 points per game. And there's just really no, I think it's over for Dabble and the Giants. And I think Washington, this is a good point for them to prove that last week, they can bounce back. They won that game. I think a lot of people are skeptical. Let's see what they actually have. But, they played Baltimore well. They won this game, even though they shouldn't have. Now they have an opportunity to come and face kind of an overmatched team, and I think they get it done.
My next pick is the Ravens laying a 9-point total against the Broncos. Look, the Ravens have already lost games to the Raiders and the Browns. Now, the Browns are a divisional opponent, I get it, but the Ravens have clear Super Bowl aspirations. They cannot keep losing games that they need to win. They're at home, and first thing we'll talk about in this game is Denver has a great defense. Nobody questions that. Great pass rush, great corners, but realistically, the Ravens, they can beat you with their tight ends, and that's going to be a problem. They could beat you with Derrick Henry, and if the pass rush comes, Lamar Jackson just takes off and shreds them. I just don't see that this defense is going to be able stylistically to hang with an offense that's almost impossible to defend. And then the other side of the ball, the whole thing that gets things going for the Broncos, it starts with their run game. And the Ravens don't commit extra bodies, but yet they are one of the best run defenses in the league. And if the Broncos are in obvious passing situations, and I know that Ravens pass defense has been bad this year, and they were without 2 of their 3 corners. I was like, Marlon Humphrey was out, Nate Wiggins was out. But realistically, they're in obvious passing situations. We're going to see extra safeties on the field. We're going to see disguised looks and simulated pressures. Bo Nix isn't ready for that. Bo Nix needs to play in favorable situations. I don't see that here. I think that the Ravens get a lead, and then once Denver's one-dimensional, it's going to go backwards fast. I think the Ravens run away with this one. All right, let's go around the horn one more time. Bill, you like the other side of that game that I just went all in on the Ravens on. You like the Broncos. Tell everybody why they should consider the Broncos.
Scary weekend for NFL bettors. Look, you're getting a bag of rocks on that one. The Ravens are 32nd against the pass in the NFL. They'd be 33rd, but there's only 32 teams. Bo Nix is going to throw the ball early on Sunday. They're not going to fall into the trap of trying to run against the Ravens. They're going to attack that defense. They're going to keep it close. I know the Ravens got Deontay Johnson. They got a buffet of options for Lamar Jackson, Zay Flowers, Derrick Henry, Mark Andrews, who I love. He's underrated this year. I don't do fantasy, but I'm sure you fantasy guys all know about that. The Broncos are top 7 in the NFL in scoring, top 7 in the NFL. In points, top 7 in rushing yardage. This is going to be the toughest defense the Ravens have faced since opening night in Kansas City. Now, I love Lamar Jackson. I still like the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. I like him to win this game. I just don't see him covering 9 points. That's a 2-score cover against the team that can hang defensively. And the Ravens, they're going to be happy to get the win and get out of town. They're like they're not covering. Their biggest cover this year has only been 4 points. They whiffed on 7 and they've whiffed on 9 earlier this season. This isn't like Clemson playing Virginia. The Ravens are going to keep this within if it's a tight game, they'll take a 3 or 7-point win and be happy with it.
Adam, you and I both like the Eagles. Why don't you start out and I'll pile on?
Yeah, 7.5 isn't a great number. I wish it was still -7, which it was on early Monday,
right
before people started looking around and Jaguars, injury reports started coming out. I think the Jacksonville offense is just going to have a tough time of it. I still like Trevor Lawrence. I still think he's a great quarterback. Who's he going to throw the ball to exactly? Who's going to move the ball for Jacksonville this week? I'm not entirely sure. So I think it's just going to be rough going for them. I think the Eagles, Sirianni was about to get fired about 4 weeks into the season. It just took them a little time, more than people expected, to get going. But now they've won their last 2 by 20 and 25 points. I think now they're starting to click. This is only their 3rd true home game of the season as well. I think they want to prove something at home. They want to take care of business here, keep the train rolling in the right direction, keep that momentum going. And I think Jacksonville is just going to kind of be a speed bump here.
Yeah, Vic Fangio has got this defense in the last couple of weeks out of the bye, really playing really well. Cooper DeJean, the corner, looked really good last week. The pass rush has gotten better with each week. The run defense has been solid. Nakobe Dean at linebacker, we've seen his play ramp up. This system is working now. And like you said, they're playing Jacksonville. We know that Christian Kirk's done for the season. We know that both Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis left last week's games with injuries. Not sure their status will be. They traded away their left tackle, Cam Robinson, to the Vikings earlier in the week. And their rushing attack is hit or miss. And you don't really run on the Eagles. I just don't see a path. Like you mentioned, offensively, the Eagles, for the first time last week, I thought they looked like a complete offense. They were doing more under center with Jalen Hurts instead of too much shotgun. They're basing the run game and building off of that. That makes them lethal. So all that said, yeah, I think the Eagles at home, they do cover that 7.5 number. Nick, you've got one more game for us. Go right ahead.
Yeah, you guys have put me in a bad spot coming off of all this Jaguars negativity. But no, I think you're right, guys. If Brian Thomas especially isn't out there, you're asking Jacksonville to do a lot to keep up with this Philly team that does seem to be finding itself. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills, guys, a team that I was skeptical of coming into the year, a team that continues to prove me wrong on a week-to-week basis, a team that just laid waste to 2 straight opponents in consecutive weeks. I think a lot of people thought Seattle would make that a game at home last week. Buffalo said absolutely not. This defense has a way of generating key turnovers. Even when they get off to slow starts, as they have the last 2 weeks, they could just flip the switch, and all of a sudden they're at 30 points midway through the 4th quarter, and you just kind of wonder, how did that happen? I think that could happen again this week against Miami. I think the Dolphins, in a lot of ways, thought they could just sleepwalk their way to a win. So, all right, we got Tua back. Cardinals defense isn't any good. We'll just go win this game by a couple scores, and all of a sudden we're back on track. I just don't know if Miami has it, man. I know we've seen a pretty small sample of this team with Tua this season, but it hasn't looked great. They scratched and clawed to get by the Jags in week 1. They were getting blown out by Buffalo in week 2 before Tua went out. And now you got to go to Buffalo for this game. I think with it hanging under 7, we're still getting a good number. I know there is a 6.5 out there at FanDuel, but I think Buffalo's the better team in just about every aspect. I know Miami has names. We still think of what the Dolphins offense could be if you want to go back to like week 4 and 5 of last season, but it just hasn't looked like that in a long time. And I think, you look at the total in this game, it's up at 50. Miami's going to have to score with the Buffalo Bills in this game to keep up. And I just really don't trust the Dolphins to do that. So I'm taking the Bills -6 at home this week, guys.
Favorite part of the show. We're going to have some closing thoughts here, and whatever those thoughts happen to be, we'll start out with Bill Speros. Bill, go right ahead. What's your thoughts for this week?
Happy Halloween. Next Tuesday, Missouri is going to vote to legalize sports betting. The law becomes effective on January 1st. Expect a launch there by the start of next football season.
Nick, why don't you go ahead and give us your closing thought?
The one game that didn't make my card, guys, but I kind of wish I would have subbed in is taking the Commanders, riding with Adam on that one. I think this Commanders team -3.5, if we're looking for a bonus bet here, that's where I would lean. I know it's such an obvious letdown spot, right? You're coming off of the, out of nowhere win of all out of nowhere wins last week against Chicago, but Jayden Daniels, I just don't even view him as a rookie quarterback. He has been so consistent, so solid week to week. I think it's really important that he made it through that game, not only with a win, but made it through unscathed, like didn't further injure his ribs. He should be healthier this week. I think this Giants team just is trending in the wrong direction. They might not have Tyrone Tracy, who's run really well for them over the last couple of weeks. He's in concussion protocol. And like Adam said, I mean, the Commanders dominated that game. That was the no kicker game for the Giants, early in the season. And, if the Commanders could just do anything in the red zone, where they did struggle again last week, I think this could be, a game where they kind of roll on the road against the Giants team that I think after losing last week, you get the feeling that they know their season is over. Commanders are riding high right now. So if I had to throw one more out there, I would roll with Adam and take Commanders -3.5.
Adam Thompson, what have you got for your final thoughts?
My final thought was also a bonus bet, but I'm going big. I'm going Carolina Panthers money line.
Whoa.
At home, New Orleans Saints, a team they lost to earlier in the season, 47-10.
Oof.
But if Carolina is going to win a game, it's going to be this time. Derek Carr's back, probably. He's less than 100%. New Orleans has lost their last 3 games by 13, 24, 23, and 18. Bryce Young played by far his best game last week. They still got beat by 14. But I think the Saints have issues in the trenches. I think Carolina actually has a path to victory here. I'd like them +7, but I'm sprinkling the money line on the Carolina Panthers this week.
Saucy take from Adam Thompson. And by the way, is Derek Carr ever 100%? Just asking, wondering here.
He just limps from huddle to sideline to city.
My closing thought is just the beauty of the Kansas City Chiefs. And I know a lot of people hate them because they've been winning for a lot of years. But I remember back when New England was winning Super Bowls, there were years of their offense would set records. And then there were years where they were doing it with defense. They won different ways. And that's what we're seeing with the Chiefs. We've seen the big years at the scoring, and now we're seeing them basically no explosives on offense, like at all. It's 4 or 5 yards per carry. Just ground the life out of you, throw possession passes when you need to, and their defense. And the defense has become in a team that is really cap strapped, and yet they found a way to keep Steve Spagnuolo and to have this defense. Just if you hate the Chiefs, I get it. Watch them and just enjoy what they're doing, because this is just really, really good football that we're getting to see. All right, let's recap the picks for this week. So we have Bill Speros has the Thursday night Halloween game, has the Texans over the Jets, the Lions, and then the Broncos +9. Adam Thompson's going with the Chicago Bears, Washington Commanders, and the Eagles laying some points. Nick Whalen, the Lions, likes the over in the Colts and the Vikings, and then the Buffalo Bills over the Miami Dolphins. I'm going with the Ravens. I have a little disagreement with Bill on that one. We'll see how that one shakes out. I agree with Adam on the Eagles, and I like the Browns +2. All right, everybody, this has been the Bookies Plus Weekly Gambling Show. Be sure to bookmark bookies.com/picks so you can check our free picks for the NFL and other sports. There will be another episode of the show every Wednesday for the remainder of the NFL season. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.